that matter, and they really fucking matter. There's like 4 things that matter, and they really fucking matter. I mean, objectively, I mean, you should care, especially you, if you thought about it for 5 fucking minutes.
Welcome to episode 59 of the Outer Voices podcast. We're your hosts, Keem and Esme.
Woo!
The woo seemed a little late this time.
I mean, it kind of was. I'm not sure how I started doing that or why I continue doing that, but it's tradition now, so I want to keep doing it, I suppose.
We are back. Apologies for missing last week. It was,
We were having too much fun.
Yeah.
I was having too much fun.
It was half fun, half chaos.
Well, no, it was all chaos, but it was mostly fun.
I give it that. I give you that.
Yeah, your problem is that you don't think that chaos and fun can happen at the same time.
Because chaos usually works to my disadvantage.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, but we are back. Hope you guys didn't miss us too much. Both of you that listen regularly.
Oh, give our listeners a little more credit. I believe there's more than 2.
Okay, all 3 of you that were listening regularly.
Oh, hush.
I'm just playing. But we are back. As always, we are burdened by such heavy things as the news and such. Did you hear Paul Manafort is going to trial and likely going to jail?
No, I did not hear that because
I
try not to pay attention to the news, except when I have to find my news story for the week. Uh-huh.
I happen to pay attention because I'm just waiting for the shoes to all drop. But yeah, Paul Manafort's going on the trial for a whole bunch of shit.
Good.
And there's talk of there's talk of Cohen flipping soon because Cohen is also looking to be charged with some quite a few crimes. I mean,
surprise.
If any of this actually matters is up in the air, but it's always interesting to watch as this unfolds, as everything just kind of breaks apart. I'll tell you how strange of a world is that we live in right now. We are now closer to North Korea than we are to Canada.
Yes.
Canada don't do shit.
Except help us.
And all they do is give us maple syrup and like compliments. But we've somehow managed to alienate Canada and kiss North Korea's ass. An actual dictator. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, while we're talking about the news, do you want to go into the news? Our news story of the week?
Nah. That's how I feel about the news.
But we have to do it.
Oh.
So should I go or should you want to go?
I'll go, I suppose. So the news story that I'm going to pull up for this episode, which it's a little bit late because we took a week off, right? Is the Supreme Court case, having to do with the cakes, right? Wherein a bakery refused to make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple, and then it made it all the way to the Supreme Court as to whether or not they should have to be forced to bake a cake, and they were trying to claim that they should not have to do it on the grounds of their sincere religious belief that gay people shouldn't be married, right? And everybody has heard at this point what the outcome of that case was. which is that the Supreme Court ruled on their side in the case that made it to the Supreme Court. And now I'm pulling it up so that I don't butcher it like so many people have. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Masterpiece Cake Shop Limited versus Colorado. And really, what this ended up being was they really just kind of ruled that the lower courts had been unnecessarily hostile to these bakers, which is not really what the main issue was here, what most people consider the main issue here, right? So the Supreme Court could have made a strong statement about like whether or not somebody can like legally, legitimately discriminate against somebody on the basis of their own religious beliefs.
Here's the thing: they can't.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't make a strong statement, and they can't.
Yeah.
But because of precedent, they can't rule on that because it's a private business, and the government really doesn't really have that much of a hand in deciding whether private businesses can discriminate or not. The only times the government can really step in if the people bringing the case against them brought in the Commerce Clause, and that somehow this discrimination was affecting interstate commerce. But from the arguments, it was seen the way it sounded, no one brought up this argument. And even if they did, this argument probably wouldn't stand because it is if I'm not mistaken, it's a local bakery. They don't really have a lot of effect on interstate commerce.
Yeah.
So, honestly, the Supreme Court can't really do anything with this because, once again, Supreme Court makes rulings on what the government can and cannot do, not really what people can and cannot do. And since this doesn't really involve the government, in fact, it touches on freedom from and of religion, which the Supreme Court doesn't really like to touch anyway.
Yeah. Because
once you get there, you get in some very, 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 very dangerous territory, and the Supreme Court they're not going to mess with that. But like, with that being said, I get people are upset. I get people, and I get why they're upset because discrimination is wrong. It's bad. But in this case, the Supreme Court can't really do anything about that. Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court has to uphold in most cases, including this one, they have to uphold the precedent that has been set before them in other Supreme Court cases. And if the lower courts did not uphold that precedent, they did their job, basically. As horrible as that sounds, the Supreme Court really can't do anything if a private business wanted to not sell to anyone or sell to specific types of people unless that had a major impact or had some impact on interstate commerce.
Noted.
So, like, as weird as it sounds, people are upset about it. People are very upset about it. However, it's no surprise, and two, they can't really do anything. This can be done. Something can be done, maybe at a legislative level, maybe, and even that is kind of iffy because once again, the government can't really tell you what to do with as a private business owner. That's just how it is. Like I said, unless it has a burden, it puts a burden on interstate commerce. So yeah, sorry about that.
That was a long rant. In any case, part of my frustration with this is that we're already, like, even before this, we had been seeing the attitudes that are leading up to this, and the people who want to discriminate against LGBT people on the basis, like, deny them services, deny them, don't refuse to sell things to them on the basis of their identity, because their identity, like the identity of LGBT people, is somehow against religion. Like, those people have just been emboldened by this, despite the fact that this ruling didn't really say that what the bakers did was or was not okay, right? All it said was that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was inappropriately hostile to these people's religious beliefs. That's all it said. And that doesn't say anything about whether or not the baker was okay, like, doing what they did. Because, like you said, they can't say that. They can't rule on that.
And it also seems the people making the argument against the baker did not make the correct arguments.
Yeah.
Because with the Supreme Court going, that these civil rights, whatever, was hostile, like overwhelmingly hostile against their religion or whatever, or against their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
It sounds like the Civil Rights Council went, okay, these religious beliefs, or having this religious belief and using it to discriminate, is something that's not right. And when that happens, you're targeting the religious belief, which you can't legally do.
Yeah.
So, once again, the lawyers did not do a good job.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there. Lawyers did not do a good job. But, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, like, that was basically it, right? But the real concern that I have is that, like, the kind of people who are seeing this as a win for the quote-unquote religious liberty clauses are the same people who want to make it so that anybody could deny LGBT people any kind of services based on their religious beliefs. Really, you do find people who are arguing that people who are doctors, people who provide medical services, EMTs, right? Those people should also be able to refuse services to people who are LGBT based on their religious beliefs, which I can't imagine that would ever hold up in a court. But in the meantime, people are going to be hurt by this. And it's just a whole bunch of bullshit. But
yeah. Well, and see, this is where I think basic legal knowledge and, like, basic constitutional knowledge needs to be taught early.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people seeing this as a victory for the religious right and other stuff, they also do not understand how constitutional law works.
Yeah.
And what you can and cannot do. Like, private businesses have quite a bit of leeway where they can refuse service to whoever to a certain point. Because when that steps over a certain point, they can't do it anymore. Secondly, as when it comes to doctors and whatever, when you become a doctor, EMT, most of the time those are public services.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those people are government employees. They can't refuse service to anyone.
Well, but a lot of them are not, right? There is not a publicly operated hospital in all of Memphis. Every hospital in Memphis is privately owned, and most of them are religious.
Here's the thing, though. Doctors have to be publicly certified.
Yeah.
With that comes an oath. Things you have to do. And if you do something against that, you can have your certification taken away.
Yeah.
And like that's what I was meaning by that.
Yeah.
Like there are certain things that you have to do to be a doctor, to be this, to be that. And that if you don't do those things, you get it taken away.
Yeah, but in the meantime, people are hurt by it. And I'm not saying that a ton of doctors are suddenly going to start doing this shit, but some of them might. And there is way too many people who believe that that should be okay. And there's going to be a small number of people who act on that. And it's just, I mean, it's just stupid.
It is. I mean, but I mean that's always the case. Even before this false victory was handed down, there were people already trying to pull this bullshit anyway.
Yep.
I mean, and it's just gonna embolden the. Once again, this is a small. I would like to point this out. These are not majority views.
No, they are not.
These are a percentage and a percentage. And as a matter of fact, the religious right and all this stuff, as much as it's pitched by the news and the media and stuff as like this is the majority and blah blah blah, it's not. It has never it is not. This is a minority of people that have manipulated their way into positions of power. That's it. Most of the public, most of the people are not going to do this. But with that being said, the percentage of a percentage that are going to try this bullshit, they're going to find out quickly that this like they won nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that also, not only have they won nothing, like really haven't won anything legally, because that ruling that they just handed down wasn't. Once again, it's not a ruling on the actions of the person. It wasn't even a ruling on if they can do this. It was a ruling on what the lower courts did wrong.
Yeah.
So if this. And what's likely to happen, it always happens. This case is going to be brought again. And by this case, I mean a case that is going to be very similar to this is going to be brought. And that case is going to be brought on the merits of what the person did. And if they can do it, and that's likely to have a different outcome.
Yeah.
Because it's going to have a different argument.
Yep. Well, all right. So now what's your news? I'm moving this along because we've been at this for a little while.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Mine is less local. I mean, more local, less national. So this is coming out of Fauquier County in West Virginia? No, Northern Virginia. Sorry.
Okay.
A candidate for Congress by the name of Nathan Larson. One of his political platforms is for the legalization of incest.
So what now?
And child, it's more specifically child sex, child incest. He's running as an independent in the 10th Congressional district, so he's not affiliated with any like official party. And he is a convicted pedophile and a white supremacist.
Of course.
But yes, he talked about how he wanted to make incest legal because he doesn't think the government should interfere with anyone's personal lives. And that by outlawing incest and pedophilia in this way, the government is overstepping into people's personal liberties. Now, with that being said, he doesn't think other people should be able to molest children.
Just him.
Just in the family.
What? What? What?
When asked about, and he said it's the person's right to do that within their family, and I quote: "The state should not interfere with people's decisions. Like if people were to say, well, the genetic quality might not be as good as if people inbreed, they could say the same thing about a lot of people who have bad genetics who should be passed on. These days, there's a lot of genetic tests. We can tell what kind of things people have." He also, when asked about, okay, well, you say you don't want to interfere with people's personal freedom. What about the rights of the children? Because children cannot consent to sex with an adult. His reply is, well, like with the girls specifically, I just believe that it should be for fathers to make those decisions. I believe in a patriarchal order.
I mean, obviously, if he's arguing this bullshit, that's gross. Ew.
Yep. And see, this is also part, and this is as horrifying as this is to say, but this is part of a oddly growing. I wouldn't say it's a movement, because it's not something that's really being accepted, but it's a larger amount of people using the argument of personal liberty, personal freedom, freedom of blah, 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 freedom of that, to justify things like pedophilia and justify things like incest. There are websites that are dedicated to the promotion of incest, under the guise of basically libertarianism. The government cannot come in and interfere with our lives. So how dare they make this illegal? This is my family. I should be able to do what I want in my home with my family. Or this is my child, and I should be able to decide what to do with my child. And the government shouldn't have anything to say about that.
And I mean, that works all the way right up until the part where you're committing child abuse. Like, ugh.
Yep. And see, and he does say something. When asked about the rights of children, he says the law doesn't treat children as having the same full rights as adults. And that's true.
Yeah, but even children have the right to, like, physical safety and emotional safety, right? If you are creating an abusive, unsafe environment for your kid, like, absolutely somebody should step in and say, no, you can't do that because this is an autonomous human being. Just because they're a child doesn't make them your property.
Except in cases where it does, which...
No,
once
but
again,
still an autonomous human being, though.
The law is kind of funky on that. The law is very funky on that. That's why child services has to, like, people in child services have to walk a very, very unique line, because the way our legal system is set up, children's rights and how children's rights pertain to adult rights is very strange and very waxing and waning. That's very similar to I think it was in Kentucky. I think we talked about this in Kentucky, where the Kentucky legislature struck down a bill that was going to be passed that was going to outlaw child marriage.
Yeah.
Because, again, you have this stupid argument, once again, for religious freedom. I'm throwing this back in there, blast from the past. And religious freedom and personal family autonomy and the legal right of a parent for custody and care, for a parent to have custody and care of a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, it's murky and it's horrible, and it allows for people like this to get a platform and a platform with some legal justification.
If.
I think the moral of our entire news segment is the American legal system is a mess,
Yes.
and it allows people to fuck around with it.
Yes.
It needs work.
Yes.
But yeah, I just had to. I had to bring a. And while I'm like, I don't want to bring attention to that person because, like, this person's a shitbag. Like, Larson, I know you're not hearing this, and if anybody like in Virginia hears this and knows this guy, please go tell him he's a shitbag. And go tell people not to vote for him. I don't think many people are going to vote for him because, once again, the people that would vote for this asshole is a minority in a minority in a minority.
Yeah.
But honestly, you can't be too safe in Trump's America because, you know what? Fuck, like, the rules have been thrown out the window. But yeah. Please let it be known how much of a shitbag this horrible, disgusting person is. Jesus. Also, okay, this is a complete side note, whatever. For all of you hearing like all these bad news things that are going on in government with these people, whatever, and how bad society seems right now, please remember, please remember, this is not everyone. In fact, it is nowhere near the majority of people. It's just that the way things have been set up and the way things have been set up on a political level, not minority groups, but people in, let's say, less progressive areas generally tend to have more political power. Because that's the way things were set up originally, to try to give poorer people, more rural people, more political power. That has what's the word? Backfired. Mm-hmm. That has backfired tremendously, obviously. But like, that's what happens. This is not the majority out. This is not the majority of people. This is not the way the majority of people think. And even with these super, like, religious freedom bullshit and all this stuff, these people are not the majority. They are not how most people think and live their lives. These are people that are loud. They are using what clout they have gotten from the way things are set up to push things. But this is not everyone. Mm-hmm. This is nowhere near everyone. This is not the majority. Most people do not agree with any of the things that are happening right now in this country, in our society. So when you think that the things are just terrible and they can't get any worse and everybody's awful, just remember that it's not everyone. It's a minority of people. They just happen to be loud and they just happen to have power. And, you know, we do have the ability to take that power away from them. We just have to use that ability. Mm-hmm. It's like a bug's life. We're the ants. There's so many more of us than there are of them. And if we wanted to, we could make them go away. And we should. But we're going to move on for now. move on to the. We're gonna move on to our topic segment after a brief music interlude.
Music this week is brought to us by Slate Dump, so check out the show notes for the link to their Bandcamp page and enjoy.
I scrub the things, I put the food on, I sew your pants, I clean the rug up when there's a bad spot, you take the trash out. I put the dog in, I let the cat out, I clean the car up when there's an accident, I leave the light on, I keep the house wet, you take the trash out. I'll show you something if it's rotten, then throw it away. Come on, come on, come on, come on, look what I did today. I bring the bread home, I clean the can, I keep the bed made, I sew your pants, you keep that Batman under a ziplock, you take the trash out. Mama told me something, if it's rotten, then throw it away. Come on, come on, come on, look what I did today. I do the laundry, for you can smell good. I leave the light on, you never come back home. I'm doing all the chores, but I got one more. Now get your ass out, or take that trash out.
And welcome back, everyone, to our topic segment. So today we're going to talk about and talk about something that is very, very close to us and close to so many people, and that is how dealing with mental illness and mental health in relationships.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this is very, very close to us because I have been very candid about it on the show before, but I have depression pretty badly, and I have anxiety really badly.
Yeah.
And it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, and also on very on other levels, I've known many people who have had to deal who've been in relationships with people with other more severe mental illnesses, and so it's something that, like I said, I've confronted almost all my life, and currently, as Ez can attest, deal with it on a daily basis. Even like even before I was born, my mother's first husband before he passed away was schizophrenic, and I have lived with stories of like my mother living with a person with schizophrenia and all the different things that happen there. So, like I said, it's a thing. But Ed, you want to step in here?
Like with what, right? Because so like my largely, right, my perspective here is somebody like I sometimes get anxiety and stuff with regards like related to work, and so mental health is something that I know like I have to pay attention to with regards to my relationships, specifically like getting the support that I need to deal with my fucking job. But like I don't personally deal, like I don't have mental illness. I don't have to deal with that. So all of my experience with that is on the support side, right? Having friends and having partners who deal with mental illness and what it's like to be in a relationship with somebody who needs that extra support.
Well, see, now we can talk about it from both sides.
Yes.
So, and like I said, for a person with mental illness, being in a relationship is it's very difficult when your reality is not the same as everyone else's.
Yeah.
It puts a burden on any relationship, not even just a romantic one or a sexual one or whatever, but even like your friends and whatever. Like for me, for instance, I live in a state of constant worry, like constant worry, because just the way my brain works is there are a billion ways something could go wrong.
Yep.
And 2 ways things can go right. So I am very much in a very constant state of worry. Not even just like if something going to happen to someone, or what could happen to someone, but whether this person may get up today and decide they don't want me around anymore. Or what have I said today to make this person angry with me? And in most cases, they're not angry with me.
Yeah.
And they're not tired of me. But my brain says they're angry. I have messed up. I have done something wrong. How can I fix it? Or I am about to do something wrong. Let me not do something. It's very much like living, at least for, like I said, my specific thing, it's like living on eggshells.
Yeah.
But those eggshells really don't exist in most cases. Those eggshells don't really exist outside of your mind. But that doesn't make them any less real to you. So, and like I said, that's just speaking once again from my very own personal experience with being in a relationship with mental illness. Like I said, I live in constant worry, and I tell Ed this all the time. Like we're coming up on 3 years, and I know you're gonna say it's only 2.5 or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be 2.5 the end of this month.
I'll round up. I always round up. Because time flies. Time flies. It'll be December before you know it. but we're coming up on 3 years, and with my other partner, we're coming up on 2 years, and I tell them both all the time, I was like, I can't fathom how you have put up with me for this long. It blows my mind.
I mean, that works both ways, though.
True.
As ridiculous and flighty and weird as both of us are, and you keep putting up with both of us.
and this is another thing. Once again, with like anxiety and depression, especially, oftentimes people with anxiety and depressions actually they try harder in relationships because they think it's only a matter of time before it's over, and they're going to do whatever it takes to not lose something. One of the few, like, what they think is the few good things they have in life, which in many cases that often leads to them getting involved in abusive relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if it's abusive, that's the only thing that they see that's good. That's the only thing they get that feels like somebody cares even a little bit. Once again, speaking for myself, back before I even knew what the hell was going on in my brain, I was involved in a relationship that at the time I didn't realize was very emotionally abusive. The person I was involved with did very terrible things that they knew would hurt me, but they knew I wasn't going anywhere. And as a matter of fact, when they did these hurtful things, it would be me that would apologize, because in my mind it was my fault. I should have done something. I should have fixed some variable to make them not have done what they did. And that, honestly, that drove me to a really, really bad place for a while.
No kidding.
A horrible place. But I mean, that's what it can be like for someone, like I said, who is especially with anxiety and depression. That's how it can be when they're in a relationship. Whether if they're in a bad relationship, they will stay in a bad relationship because they can't handle life without it. They can't handle life without someone, and it's extremely difficult. Even in good relationships, because at least I believe the relationships I am in are good ones. I am going to also hope that my partners would agree.
Yes, I mean I can't speak for your other partner, but yes.
I'm pretty sure if Levy was here, she would agree as well. But I'm not gonna put words in her mouth. But even in good relationships, there's extra pressure that is put on by your brain to try to fix things or take on the responsibility of negative things when they come, because it's in your brain, it's your fault, and you're not good enough in your brain. I deal with that all the time.
Yes, you do.
I think I'm awful.
You are not awful.
And I never see why. I never see why people deal with me or want to help me or want to care about me. But like I said, I know it's all in my brain. I know it's all not really what's happening, but it's what my brain is telling me is happening. And it's difficult. It is very, very, very difficult. And people with other mental illnesses, like I said, I've seen people with schizophrenia in relationships. And with schizophrenia, many times for people who there's a romantic quote unquote notion of what schizophrenia is.
Mm-hmm.
But the simplest idea of what schizophrenia is sometimes your reality and everyone else's reality does not link up.
Yeah.
Sometimes your reality becomes something completely different than everyone else's. And being schizophrenic in a relationship, that's you are completely not only are you not seeing eye to eye with someone, you're not even in the same world as someone at the time when you're having an episode.
Yeah.
My mother had told me stories where her husband did not know who she was. At times where in his mind, he was married to someone else. So, and I'm sorry, that's kind of difficult. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I did not know this person. He passed away before I was born, but I know my mother's stories. I know how she felt in the stories she told.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, so it's kind of emotional. But it's very difficult for someone with a mental illness to have, like I said, any kind of relationship. When your brain is not working the way it should, and your reality is just not the same as everyone else's, from it being slightly skewed to completely skewed and completely different,
Mm-hmm.
it's extraordinarily difficult to function. I said personally, I have issues all the time. There are days where I will do nothing but just weep. Especially aggravated by the fact that the people I am in relationships with and my family who I love is so far away, combined with the mental illness, it gets extraordinarily overbearing at times.
Yeah. And then because you don't want to worry us, you may or may not even say anything.
Yeah. And the and like I said, once again, just for me personally, so I am probably more open than most people with what's happening, but when I am at my absolute worst, I don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ez knows that I'm sure I didn't have to tell them that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I'm at my absolute worst, when I'm at my lowest, no one's gonna know. And with that being said, hey, especially with, I mean, people only want to talk about this when famous people die or commit suicide, but check on your loved ones.
Yeah.
If you know, if you know they're dealing with something, check on or dealing with mental illness or whatever. Don't just check on them when you can tell they're not feeling well, or you can tell they're feeling bad right now. Check on them when they're most quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they're smiling. If they're quiet and smiling and it seems like nothing's wrong, check on them.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, when people are at their worst, at their lowest, and when they're right there at their edge, they're not going to tell you. Most, admittedly, I've had suicide attempts before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think no one knew about them when they happened. No one knew about them to quite a while because, like I said, when people are at their lowest, they're not going to tell anyone because they don't want to be a burden. They don't want to be bothersome.
Yeah.
So, like I said, check on your people. Yes, check.
Yeah.
But anyway, that kind of goes on to your side of things a bit.
Yeah, so like I said, my experience with this is almost exclusively from the perspective of a partner to people who have mental illness, who deal with depression and anxiety. Like I said, because of my job, sometimes I deal with acute anxiety and issues to the point where I have thought about I have thought about talking to somebody about it, or I have talked to somebody about it. But so far, like, that's all caused by my job. Like, there's an acute cause for that. And even if you're dealing with that, right? Like, not everybody who needs help has a diagnosable mental illness. Like, everybody deals with a lot of shit. So it doesn't matter if you have a mental illness or not that you've been diagnosed with. If you're feeling like you need support, reach out to your people. Like, let your people help you. Reach out to friends, reach out to partners, reach out to family, reach out to whoever can help you. Even if you're not diagnosed with a mental illness. Like, everybody needs help sometimes. Get a fucking therapist, right? Don't, like, let's fight the stigma on therapy. Talk to a therapist. Therapists are great.
If you have access to it.
Yes, right. Like that. That is a real thing, right? Where it's, if you don't have insurance, if you don't have disposable income, it can be really, really tough to access that stuff. But even so, there are resources online that are cheap or free, where you can at least have, like, someone to talk to. Like, if you don't feel like you can reach out to friends or family, there are resources that are available, that you can find someone to talk to. Like actually going to see a therapist can be cost prohibitive. God knows I know that. That's why I haven't been recently. But if you have the resources to access that, don't feel like you have to avoid that because of some, like, preconceived idea of what kind of people should access that, right? Like, don't say, well, I don't have a mental illness, so I don't need that. No, that's not what it is, right? That's not how that works, right? Most people can benefit from talking to a professional about their issues at some point or other. But from the perspective of somebody who's in a relationship with people who struggle with things, right? Who have depression, who have anxiety. The number one thing, I think, is just to be there, right? And I am not perfect at it, but I recognize that, like, just me being there and being able to say over and over, like, yes, I love you. No, you're not a burden. Like, I know that your brain is telling you that you are, but you're not, right? And to be able to say that over and over, knowing that it's not going to be like, I know that I can say that a million times and Keem may or may not be able to take my word for it. But saying it is important. But yeah, so that's one of the most important things, I think. Can you back me up on that, Keem?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to be there and to be able to reassure, right? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. Like, having some reassurance goes a long way. Because even if it doesn't chip through the even if it doesn't break all the way through the fog, it'll take a little bit away.
Yeah.
Like, and when somebody is like feeling it, like really feeling like off, even a little bit helps. Like, it helps a lot. Like, at least for me. I can speak for myself in that. So, like, yes, like, show some support. Show support. Say you're there. Also, this is the biggest thing. This is one of the biggest things ever. Let them know that their feelings are okay.
Yes.
Because some of the biggest arguments I've had, or biggest issues I've had with other people in my life, is when I have been feeling like terrible, or I'm like lost in the fog. When people have said, instead of going, your feelings, like your feelings matter, they are valid, they go, oh, that's just your brain talking, or that's not right, or blah blah blah, or you need to stop acting like that, or whatever. That's not helpful.
Yeah, that's not helpful, and I kind of want to yell at that person. And I know who you're talking about too, and I kind of want to yell.
And like I said, it's nothing. It's nothing against them, and they know it. It's just, it's for that person in particular. It's how they look at me, as in, you're stronger than that. Like, I get it. Like, in their mind, like, you don't need to have these feelings. You don't have to deal with it, but you don't need to deal with it because you're stronger than that and you can just push through. But I can't just push through.
Yeah,
that's not
how it works.
And so, like, when someone comes to you and they're suffering, first thing, let them know that their feelings are valid, that they're not wrong, but because in their minds they're already the lowest, especially with anxiety and depression. In their minds, they're already feeling bad on themselves. They're already blaming themselves for everything, everything you can think of. They're already blaming themselves for it. And when you go, your feelings are wrong, that only makes them feel worse. Because not only are they blaming themselves for everything, even the fact that they are feeling this way is a sign that they're not good enough.
Yeah.
So, that's it. One of the easiest things to help someone is to go, your feelings are valid.
Right. Like, it doesn't matter really, like, whether or not it's quote unquote all in their head, because they're still feeling it. Whether or not it's true, like, that feeling is still there, and telling them that it should be not there is not going to make it go away. It's just going to make everybody feel worse about it.
Also, another thing, if you want to suggest someone, like, go get professional help, there are ways to suggest that. Never go, you need help, or you need to go get help. Like, don't be forceful with that recommendation.
Yeah. I'm a little guilty of that one. Of course, I do that with everybody all the time. I just insist that everybody needs help all of the time.
That's true.
Because yeah.
Because, like, a lot of the time, the people you're talking to, they know they need help.
Yeah.
Like,
and there's a reason that they haven't accessed it yet.
Right. I know for me personally, one, the medication, And for a lot of people, it's the same thing. The medication that balances you out has other side effects.
Mm-hmm.
And like the medication that balances me out, when I was taking something, what it would take, it was an appetite. It caused an appetite suppression, and it would make me unable to eat for days.
Not
which
ideal.
Which is not ideal, of course. So it's one of the reasons I'm not taking that medication anymore. Some people have other issues. I know some people have stopped taking medication because it is affected their sex drive.
Yeah.
And that has affected their relationship. So they go, okay, I need to stop taking this medication to get my relationship back to what it was. However, they don't have the mindset to function properly. Like there are reasons people just don't go get help. It's almost never because they just don't want to.
Yeah.
Like as we mentioned earlier, it can be difficult for funds. I have that same issue. Like currently I am in a financial bind, admittedly, and I don't really have the money to go see someone.
Mm-hmm.
So like there are reasons, like if someone knows that they need help, but they aren't getting it, most of the time it's for a reason. And you saying you need help is not helpful because they already know. Like most people with mental illness can tell something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like just like getting a cold. Like you don't know what you don't not know. Like when you're having symptoms of something, you know you're sick.
Mm-hmm.
You may not know what, but you know you're sick. And with mental illness, it's the same thing. When you feel like something's off, you know you're sick. Even if you don't know what it is, you know you probably need to go see someone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, stating the obvious to someone is probably not helpful.
What? It's not. Sorry, my sarcasm is not helpful here.
Oh, it's fine. Also, patience. If you're involved with someone and whether it be a serious mental health issue or like Ez was saying with your job or some other stressful thing in your life, death and grieving, have patience. Like, if you see somebody going through, have some patience. Now, there is a level that you will come to where it's toxic for you. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, like, create some space. Whether it be a long space or just some space to, like, breathe and get things together, take it. However, when someone's going through some things, you need to have some patience. You can't expect them to just get over it.
Yeah.
Which, in the Black community, that's a big thing. Mental illness, and we've talked about this a lot. Mental health and stuff has a hell of a stigma in regular society, but in the Black community, it's treated like it's nothing. It's not something that exists. I've heard so many times that therapists are just something that somebody that white people need. Black people don't need it. Black people can make it through. Because we think we can take on the world, and that has no effect on us. Or Jesus can. Oh, that's my favorite. Jesus can make all your bad feelings go away, and you just need God in your life. Like, and This is why the suicide rate in the black community is so damn high.
Yeah.
This is why the drug rate and it was one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the reasons the drug addiction rates and alcohol addiction rates and crime rates are so damn high is because we're not confronting mental illness. We're not dealing with mental illness. And like, you gotta have patience with people. You can't just tell them they should just go to church and have Jesus solve their problems, or they should just get over it, or you're strong enough, you can just make it through. You can't just tell people to get over it, because it's not how it works. It's just like any other disease. It's like any other illness. Having the will to just move through it. Like, you wouldn't tell somebody with cancer, get over it. Then why would you tell somebody with mental illness to get over it?
I mean, to be fair, some people do say, oh, you have cancer, well, go to church and Jesus will heal you.
And then those people die.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But that's expected. Like it's expected. If you tell somebody to go pray their cancer away, if they listened to that advice and then died of cancer, it's no surprise, because they didn't go get treatment. You know? But when someone is dealing with mental illness and somebody tells them, well, you just go pray it away, you just get over it, and they commit suicide, everyone acts like it's a damn surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. They've been telling you what's happening the whole time. You didn't listen.
Yeah.
They were dying in front of you, and you let it go because you didn't think mental health or mental illness was something that's important, that was difficult, that is a disease. So people, like, and like I said, this is not even just for, like, romantic type relationships. Any kind of relationship that you're dealing with mental illness or something, patience, understanding, being there, showing your care.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. My God, I know it's difficult. I apologize to Ez constantly.
I keep telling you, you don't need to.
But I'm going to do it anyway. Like, I apologize constantly because I know it's difficult. I know it's not easy to deal with. I am fucking needy.
Yes, you are. But I'm okay with that.
But the point is, it's hard. But nothing in life is easy.
That is true.
And when you care about someone and you see them going through something, you want to be able to help them.
Yes.
And what comes with that sometimes is things getting harder. But life's hard, yo. And this is another point I'd like to make. It's not this person or that person. This is something every single one of us is going to have to deal with. Because at some point in your life, you're going to have something that's going to affect your mental state.
Yeah.
And you're going to have mental illness. It may not be a sustained mental illness, but you're going to have at least a brief mental illness. And the things we're talking about here are going to apply to you. Where you may be the person being there for someone right now in your relationship, like you may be there for your partner or significant other or whatever. There's probably going to come a time when they're going to be that person for you.
Yeah.
And
goodness knows you've been that person for me.
I've tried. Also, I'll tell you, for a lot of people, once again, with anxiety and stuff, you also become super empathetic. And anytime someone else starts feeling off, even if you're feeling off, you are going to go try to help that other person, because one, you don't want them feeling how you feel.
Yeah.
And you actually see that a lot. Some of the most caring people in your life, and you hear this talk about, like, even the celebrities that have committed suicide and stuff. Like, if you want to go out and see, to talk about, like, the famous people or whatever, most of the things that people have said about them were the same. It's all they wanted to do was make you laugh, or they were so caring. They were there for me. They did this and did that when I needed it. And that, of course, that makes, like, just regular thought makes people go, well, I don't understand why they killed themselves. Why they kill themselves? Or, I don't know. I didn't realize they were suffering from mental illness. But in a lot of cases, once again, the reason they were so caring and they were trying to do everything in their power to make other people feel better, it's because they weren't feeling good. It's because they were suffering, and they didn't want that to spread to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with me, like Ez can attest, I constantly go out of my way to try to help people as much as I can, or be there for people as much as I can, because I don't want anyone else to feel like I feel a lot. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. So I will do my damnedest to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And guys, I apologize if I'm talking too much or.
You do that in every episode, Keem.
True, but this is a little weirder for me because it's very personal.
Yeah.
And also, I'm currently not in the best mental state.
Yeah.
I'm going through one of my times right now. So.
Do you know how I knew that you were?
How?
Because you texted me 3 times in 4 hours to confirm what our recording time was.
Yeah.
Yep, you did that. I don't know if you know that you did that, but you totally did.
Yeah, because I have the frets.
Yes. Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
before we move on from this, I wanted to give one more thing from the perspective of somebody who's in a relationship with, I'm in a relationship with you, but right, with somebody who's in a relationship with someone who has depression and anxiety. And like you said, right, it's hard. It can be hard sometimes. It can be a little frustrating sometimes. And it's important to remember, this is you're not doing all of these things, right? This is not what you want to do. It's what your brain is doing to you. You don't want to, you wouldn't apologize for things over and over and over again. And so I have to remind myself of that sometimes, just to make sure that I don't get frustrated for something that is out of your control, right? To be I sit down and I remind myself sometimes. I'm like, okay, the thing that I can do right now is to be reassuring, to say you don't need to apologize, to say yes, I'm here for you, and to be able to do that over and over again without being annoyed by it, because we are both I think I saw somebody post about it somewhere pretty recently, that it's not being in a relationship with somebody who has mental illness. It's not Like, it's not you against that other person. It's both of you together against the mental illness when you're trying to deal with stuff like that. But so that's one thing. And also, like, I have to remember that, like, no amount of me, like, loving you and supporting you is going to make this thing go away. So I have to remember not to take too much onto myself. Like, I can't, I don't shoulder any responsibility for this mental illness, right? Like, nothing I do can cure it, and I didn't cause it. It's just there. And I'll do what I can do to help manage it if I can, like, to do what I can to reassure you and to remind you that I'm here, but none of that is going to cure it magically, right?
There's no magical elixir for mental illness.
Yeah, there's no cure. There's not a magic bullet that will say, oh, and now it's gone. We're done. It's fine. Everything it's fixed.
And here's another thing. And along those lines of there's no magic cure, even on medication.
Yeah.
Medication does not cure mental illness.
It just manages
it.
Yeah.
And, like, even if when you're in a relationship with someone and they're on medication, they're still going to have those bad days. Yeah. They're not going to have as many, but they're still going to have those bad days. And you're going to have to remember that, because I know I am in which I'm not that active in anymore because there's a lot of spam on the internet where people, like, are using the group as I don't know what they're doing, but it's become kind of bad. But I was in a anxiety support group on Facebook, and a lot of people on there have had issues, like, once they're on medication with their significant others or partners or whatever, not understanding that they're still going to have bad days while they're on medication, and then blaming them for it. Like, oh, even after all that, you're just being negative. And that's not how that works. And it's really messed up.
Yeah, that is.
Anyway, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right. Like, that's an important thing to remember. And also, like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this thing, right? I think, like, that's the really, like, the hardest part of being in this relationship with you having your mental illness is, like, I try to take on too much responsibility for it on myself, which, for, like, number one, is not useful, like, because no amount of me taking on responsibility is going to make any of it any better. But also, like, that's how codependent relationships start. Like, I have to remind myself all the time that, like, I can't fix all your problems for you, and I need to, having distance seems really cold, right? Like, that's not really what I mean to say, but, like, I can't wrap myself up in your problems too, and I can't wrap myself up all in that, in that kind of close way, without it, like, without affecting me, and without it becoming a little bit codependent, right? Like, I can be here for you, but I can't take on the responsibility for it. And it took me a little while to realize that, to where, like, I can't be everything for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to say this in a way that makes sense, right? And I mean, I have a little bit of that tendency with everybody anyway. Like, I want to be really important to people. I love to be needed, but also, like, being needed too much is not healthy, right? Like, I can be here and I can be supportive and I can be someone that you can talk to and I can reassure you, but, like, ultimately we have to be independent people. Otherwise, both of us are setting ourselves up to be unhealthy. So,
And see, this is an issue with me is I need people.
yes.
Like, I'm a person that needs people with honestly a life where I don't have people, like don't have anyone,
Yeah.
like at all. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And that's not even like a mental illness thing. That's a Keem thing. I have always had people. I need people.
Yes. You are not doing so well up in New York where you have no people.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying. I tried really hard. Was I successful to introduce you to people?
Kinda, sorta. But with that being said, like me needing people and all that aside, like I am a person that likes to. I prefer to care for people, but when people start to care about me, I think too much. When once again, when I feel like I've become a burden, and once again, this is even without the mental illness just adds on to it.
Mm-hmm.
But oh shoot, my eyes are burning.
Oh.
But when I start to feel like people are caring too much, I kind of back up. But it's weird because while I back up, I also I need people to care. Like, hey, I need you to care, but don't care too much.
Yeah, this is weird to talk about. Especially since some of this stuff we have not talked about, just the two of us. We're just like having this really personal conversation on air. Whatever.
The funny thing is, like, while we haven't said these things out loud, we kind of instinctively knew, like,
Yeah.
like what you have said. I already got that.
Yeah.
Just on instinct alone, and I'm sure you know me at this point. For fuck's sake.
Yes. Yeah, I think the point that I was trying to get to there is that if you're in a relationship with somebody who does have mental illness, who does have like ongoing problems with some kind of anxiety or depression or other kind of mental illness, it's okay to be there for them. It's important for you to be there for them, but it's also important to pay attention to what your own resources are and make sure that you're not giving to them more than you can, right?
Right. 'Cause
like, take care of yourself too and be aware of what your reserves are so that you're not developing an unhealthy relationship, especially like with codependency, right? That's a real problem in people who are in these relationships.
You can't help anyone if you're fucked up.
Exactly. Right. And I noticed myself having to step back a little bit in like just to reserve my own, like especially the end of this last year where I was having all my work shit implode on me. Like I had to like turn inwards a little bit and to give you less because I needed to give myself more, right? I was dealing with my own like acute anxiety and all that shit, and it really sucked for a few weeks. But have done the work to recognize that, like, this is what needs to happen. And I would have burned out completely if I had not been aware of how the different parts of my life intersect, I think. But yeah, so be aware. Don't give reassurance and give help and be there, but not to the point where it's taking away from you. I think is the point that I was trying to make.
Right.
I'm rambly today.
Oh,
I'm rambly all the time.
Yeah, I'm the king of ramble, so or prince of ramble.
Yeah.
I have to choose. I have to choose my my royalty titles very specifically. I'm too young to be a king. I am only a prince.
Hate to break it to you, lots and lots of people have been kings at your age and younger.
Yeah, but my beard isn't epic enough to be king yet.
Sure.
Trying to think, is there anything else?
I don't know. Is there anything else? I mean, there's a million things to say on this subject, right? There's a million things, but I think we hit some highlights, at least with regards to the stuff that's most relevant to our relationship.
Right. Also, hey, educate yourselves.
Yes, please do. Sorry, as I interrupt you.
No, I was just saying, like, if you're in a relationship with someone with a mental illness, or even someone who's maybe going through something that is affecting their mental state, go read up. Like, go read up on symptoms, how they might be dealing with stuff. Because you'll be surprised what symptoms there are. You may think anxiety is shaking and panic attacks, but it has so many other ways it can manifest, and depression. And do some research. Let's say your significant other just they can't get any work done, and you just can't figure out they hadn't had anything like this before, but something happened, and they suddenly just can't get any work done. They don't have a lot of energy or whatever. They might be dealing with something.
Yep.
So learn signs, learn symptoms, learn how to deal with things, because there's literature out there that can help. But I think that's all I have today.
We will probably circle back around to this at some point.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if any of you guys know a mental health professional who could speak on this a little more, please. Because we can only speak from our experiences.
Yeah.
So a professional could highlight this in other ways. So, like I said, if you guys know anyone who's a mental health professional who would like to come on and talk, and please let us know. Or if you are a mental health professional who would like to come on and talk, please let us know. Because there are people out there who would probably like to hear this, and it'd probably be very helpful. Also, which is a show on its own, but dealing with mental illness in poly relationships is another story completely.
It's a trip. It's a trip.
Yeah, which is a whole episode within itself, and this is probably something we haven't really talked about, even personally.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
yeah, we should probably have an off-air conversation about this before
yeah,
we
we
record
definitely
it.
should have an off-air conversation about this. But anyway, we're going to move on into our sex segment before this goes on even longer.
Yes.
And of course, enjoy our sex segment after more brief music. Enjoy.
I once saw a police flower thriving in the West Virginia sun. She seemed to be so timeless against the constant flux and flow, against the constant flux and flow, against the constant flux and flow. Oh, how I wanted to pick her and make her mine. And if it's not meant to be, well, maybe the next lifetime. Maybe the next lifetime. Maybe the next lifetime. Oh, my Nepalese flower, braving the cold. Oh, I love to bring her into my fold. I'd give anything to watch her grow old. I'd give anything to watch her grow old. Chimla, can you hear me? Chimla, I need you near me. Does your third eye perceive me clearly? Chimla, can you hear me? I once saw a Nepalese flower thriving in the West Virginia sun.
And welcome everyone to the sex segment. So Keem was extremely surprised that I had a sex segment picked out in advance this week instead of trying to come up with one in the breaks in between segments. But I do have a sex segment planned to talk about. So this sex segment actually came up, for those of you who are on Facebook, this came up as part of one of the conversations for Marissa McCool's new podcast, the Rissy's Slut List, which is vastly entertaining if you want to go find that, track her down. But she put out a call for questions for her new podcast that has to do completely with sex. And Trav posted a question that I asked permission to also address. And so Trav's question was, how does one get comfortable sharing one's body with another person, especially if you have both gender feels and not a lot of sexual experience? And I really, especially with regards to the gender feels part of this question, I really wanted to take this one on. And so the first thing that I'm going to say is actually echoing how what Marissa said about it, which is, especially with regards to the lack of experience, and I would say with regards to the gender feels too, like, don't try to pretend that is anything besides what it is, right? Like, be really upfront about it. Say, hey, I don't have a lot of experience with this, or say, hey, I have these feelings about my gender and that affects like how I am going to experience this. That's really, really the number one thing, right? Is to communicate, to talk about it, to say, like, to tell the truth about what your experience is, about what you're feeling. Tell the truth. Don't try to put on a swagger that you don't have if you're feeling nervous, right? Because that'll come across. It's okay to say, I'm feeling nervous about this for this reason, right? Or I'm feeling nervous about this for these reasons. That's stuff that's okay, right? So often we think that we have to be like uber confident and super like have all that confidence already, when really it can be more exciting and more genuine, and you can have a better connection if you're willing to own up to the fact that you're feeling vulnerable in that situation. If you're willing to say, hey, I am not feeling incredibly confident about this, like, that can lead to, it can be really scary to do in the moment, but it can lead to a deeper connection. It can lead to a more satisfying encounter, I think. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to jump in on some of this too before I move on to the gender feels part of this question?
Well, being someone who's almost always nervous when involved in any sexual type behavior,
Mm-hmm.
And speaking to the inexperienced part, I wouldn't say I'm inexperienced, but I feel inexperienced a lot because it. So I'm involved with people who have. So as this, okay,
it's okay. You can say I'm a big slut. It's okay.
No. It's not about. It's not even about. Not even about like that, because most people who have gone to college have more sexual experience than I do because like that wasn't my thing in college. I did not even lose my virginity until not lose my virginity, but I didn't have sex for the first time because I don't like losing my virginity as a thing. I didn't have sex for the first time. I didn't have sex for the first time until I had graduated from college. I was well into adultdom, but not well into, but I was an adult. So once again, I don't feel experienced like a lot. And with the anxiety, I also kind of shake a little bit when I'm nervous.
No, really?
Which
again, my sarcasm is probably not helpful.
But people I've been involved with do not understand what's happening, and they immediately go, "Are you cold?" Not cold, just nervous. So like I said, it can be very difficult approaching that. Like, hey, I'm nervous. Even sometimes with my partners who I've been involved with for quite a while now, I get nervous. Like, it's just what it is. But like I said, it can be very difficult to approach. But honestly, I just I either play it off like I'm good. I play it off not in like, oh, I'm super confident. I just play it off in like, okay, I'm nervous, but we'll figure this out kind of way.
Yeah, and I mean, which is a good way to deal with it, right? Like, acknowledge the fact that you're feeling nervous, but say, like, that's not the defining factor of this encounter.
Right. I will say, and this will probably be a good your segue more into the gender field sort of way. And you can attest to this. I have asked you. So not recently, but with my sexuality stuff, I have found that I am attracted to trans women. However, I have not actually been like sexually active with someone who is transitioned or in the process of transitioning, or like from like assigned male at birth type situation. So I asked Ez, like, how, hypothetically, of course, how do I approach this, like, getting that far? How to approach, like, sex? Because I just don't know. I don't. For me, it would be just the same as my first time having sex with anyone.
What did I tell you? Do you remember? I want to remember. I don't remember how good my advice was.
Basically, you just told me to be upfront.
I mean, well,
and
yeah.
say it and ask what they want and what can I do.
I mean, low key, that's how you should have sex with everybody, right? Like, you know my favorite line, right?
I think that was my response. My response was, so just do what I've been doing.
Yeah, basically, right? Like, be upfront about how you're feeling. It's okay to say that this is your first time, like, having sex. Like, if it's your first time having sex with a person who has a penis, say that, right? And then ask what they want. Ask how whoever, and this is a good policy no matter who you're with, right? Ask how they want to be touched. Especially when dealing with people, like with trans people or non-binary people or any like people with any of those identities, like ask what words they want to use for their parts, right? Like not every, like some trans women are okay saying that they have a penis and some are not. Some are really not. And that's valid, but you don't know that until you ask. Right? And so it's always a good call to say, hey, like what words do you use to describe your body, right? These are all things that are important to do. But yeah, so to get back around to, like you said, this is a good transition into the gender feels part of this question. As somebody who is non-binary and who is okay, yeah, I'm a big slut, whatever. As somebody who does have gender feels, like it is actually one really, really good way, especially if you're feeling nervous about how to have sex as somebody who's non-binary or as somebody who is trans. One really great thing to do is to find somebody else who has done that work. Find a partner who is non-binary or who is trans, depending on how they identify, right? Like some, for quick reference, some non-binary people also call themselves trans, also identify as trans, and some don't. And that's okay. But that's why I keep making that distinction. But find somebody else who's done the work on figuring out their gender. And because they have the same vocabulary, right? They have the vocabulary of gender. They have the vocabulary of wanting, like they know, they understand why you might be uncomfortable, why having somebody touch parts of your body that cause you dysphoria is not going to be comfortable for you, and they are typically more likely to approach that encounter in a way that's going to feel good, just because they understand, right? Like, they've done the work, they know. You don't have to try to explain to them like why some things are hard for you and why some things are not, right? Because they have their own things that are hard and that aren't, right? And everybody's experiences are different, obviously, right? Like, I'm non-binary, but I don't experience a ton of dysphoria with regards to my body itself, but I do have really, really strong preferences about the words that are used to talk about my body. And that's okay, right? But a person who has also done that work to figure out the stuff about their gender is gonna be a little bit quicker to remember, a little bit more understanding of what issues I have, and more able to respond to that than somebody who is cisgender and who has not done any of that work, right? Like, Keem is pretty good at it because I've been in a relationship with him for a really long time. But like, random dude that I picked up at the bar, like, continued to misgender me because I look really female, and it's just how it is. And I'm like, okay, but I mean, he picked it up eventually, so that was good. But it still is like, I don't know. That's my recommendation, though, is especially if a large part of your discomfort with this has to do with the gender feels, find somebody else who's done the work, because it's easy. You have the same language to talk about it. Like, somebody else who has taken that time is going to be more patient, and especially if you have discomfort having certain parts of your body touched in certain ways, right? Somebody who has done the work to figure out the way their own body works with regards to all the gender shit is going to be more understanding of that.
I hope it doesn't sound weird, but it seems to be like all the way, like either way around, whether you're like cis or non-cis or whatever.
The opposite of cis is trans.
Trans. Well, people have said non-cis too, so because people have said non-cis because of the non-binary people.
That's fair.
So, haha.
That's fair. I just object to non-cis because it's still defining the trans or it's still defining the experience in terms of its relationship to cisness. But
true.
That's just me. Anyway, that's a derail.
It's almost like we're still figuring out how things work.
Yes.
But this also becomes more difficult when you're, no matter who you are, when you're having, and this is not to like judge anyone, but it becomes more iffy when you're having more randomized sexual encounters.
That makes it sound like I go to the bar and roll a die to figure out.
I mean, you do go to the bar with your D&D character, so
that is true.
You could roll a die, but you get what I'm saying, because like when you're dealing with your own gender and sexuality issues, random person at the bar is not going to be, no matter who they are, is not going to be in most cases as understanding.
Yeah, most likely.
Because understanding generally comes with rapport.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my point of that is, like, consider that if you're with randos, or like approaching randos.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my little side thing.
Yeah. And then one other piece that I wanted to talk, one other piece of this that I wanted to talk about before we close out is, if you do have, if you do experience discomfort with like people touching you in certain ways, like step number one in any sexual encounter, step number one that I recommend is to figure out by yourself before you try to bring somebody else into it, figure out what you like and how you like to be touched. Right? Do some experimentation. Figure out the different ways that you can be touched that turn you on. Right? Like, do you like anal stimulation? Do you like what do you like? Figure out what things get you off. Like know thyself. Right? Know what it is that you like before you try to bring somebody else into it. And then when you do bring somebody else into it, I mean, step number one is nobody says, I harp on this all the time, like nobody says that everybody has to enjoy the same things. Nobody says that it has to be everybody's goal every single sexual encounter that you have to come, right? Like maybe your sexual encounter leads to one person having an orgasm and one person not, right? If you decide that you want to have an orgasm in that encounter, right? Like step number one, don't put pressure on yourself. Don't say, oh, I have to come, right? Like that can be a goal and it's okay to not reach that goal if you're feeling uncomfortable. That's fine. And I know that it can be frustrating if you want that as your goal and it doesn't happen, but it doesn't need to be that. It doesn't need to be a huge deal if it doesn't, right? Like let that be okay. And like once you know the kinds of things that are going to get you off, now it's okay to tell somebody else what to do, right? I have to do that, right? It is, until very, very, very recently, it was almost impossible for me to come with somebody the first couple of times, just because like it was a little bit uncomfortable, especially while I was starting to figure out my gender shit. Like it was a little bit weird to me to like, it was just weird. And it was really tough for me to kind of let that go and to feel comfortable asking for what it was that I wanted, asking for what I knew was going to get me off. Those things were really hard for me. It's still really difficult. It's easier now, but it's still really difficult for me to come without some kind of vibration. And it just culturally, we have a script where like the quote, and this is to the point where like for most of my sexual history, I only have had sex with cis dudes. Like we have a whole cultural script where quote unquote, like the penis should be enough, right? Where even if a guy is okay bringing in toys, like I was still operating under the assumption that anybody that I had sex with would be offended if I said, hey, can I bring along a vibrator? And until I started doing that and saying, okay, like I have my vibrator here, like this is going to happen if you want me to come. Like until I finally became okay saying that, I never had sex with somebody the first time or the first couple of times that we had sex because I never brought along my vibrator. Right.
It's hilarious at this point. I'm confused when you don't bring the vibrator.
Have I ever not brought the vibrator?
No.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like,
but
you would be confused if I ever did that.
But there has been times where you haven't reached for it. I was like, and I have gone, all right, where is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but so that's like the 1-2 punch. Is step one, know what kinds of things get you off, and step number two is it feels awkward, especially if you're uncomfortable doing it, but the best way to to feel pleasure is to ask for what you know you want, right? Say, touch me this way. Say, hey, I need a vibrator here, right? And you can either like hold it there yourself or have your partner hold it, like whatever, right? Like know what you want and know how to ask for it. And it feels really, really scary and awkward the first few times that you do it. But the more you do it, the easier it will be to just ask for what you know you want, right? I freaked out a dude here a few weeks ago because, like, said rando that I brought home from the bar, and we were having sex, and I was like, ooh, I said this exactly like this. I said, oh, do you know what I really want right now? And he goes, what do you really want right now? And I pulled out my 11. I said, here, put this in me. And he goes, well then.
And in his defense, if anyone goes, use this, and pulled out the 11, the response will almost always be, well then, because I've seen that thing.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge, and it's heavy, and it's made of stainless steel. And I'm so proud of myself that I was able to pull that out. Now that's the second time. That's the second time that I've pulled that out on my first time having sex with somebody. And I'm like, please fuck me with this, because that would be amazing. But I know it will get me off. Like, if I'm asking for it, it's because I know it's what I want. And I have gotten very good reactions. Like, once they get over the shock of me handing them this large piece of steel, and they get down to actually fucking me with it, like, the reaction is very good. And so, anyway, the point is, it can feel really scary to ask for what it is that you want, but it's worth it. And really, like, the only way to get over that hump where it feels weird is just to do it. Like, find one thing that you know that you want in an encounter. Like, find one way of being touched that you know you really love, that will work for you, that will feel really, really good in that encounter, and ask. Don't be afraid to ask for it. Just say, like, and with me, it started off, it was as small as my tango, my little bullet vibe, right? Where I would pull it out and I would say, hey, if I'm going to get off, like, I need to use this. And invariably the person that I was having sex with would be like, well then, fuck yeah, use it, because I want to get you off. Right. And then it worked.
I gotta get better at asking.
Well, yeah.
Because that's, like, I still have a very, I haven't, like, I rarely ask for anything.
Well, and it can be even harder for guys, right? To where, like, if you are under, like, that script, like, hello, toxic masculinity, whatever, blah, 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 where we have this cultural script that, like, penises only need one thing, right? And so then to ask for anything else, especially, like, you're a cis dude, right? As a cis dude, to ask for anything else, people go, oh, but, like, you're a man, you only need the one thing, right? Like, no, that's not how that works. Lots of people can like lots of different things, but yeah, but really, that's one of those things, like, it's gonna feel scary, and it's gonna feel vulnerable, and it's gonna make you nervous. It's gonna be hard to do, but you just kind of, like, the first few times, you just kind of have to take a deep breath and say it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. But again, that goes back to, I super recommend having sex with queer people, especially people who have done the work of figuring out, like, gender feels, because people who have done that work are way, way more versed when it comes to asking for things that step number one, like, people who have done that work, queer people, genderqueer, non-binary, trans people, all have done the work of figuring out of like unlearning some of these scripts, right? It becomes,
But no, go ahead. I'll add when you're finished.
I was gonna say, like, typically, queer people and people who are trans or non-binary or what have you, basically give no fucks about what is supposed to be about people's sexuality, and instead are more interested in like having actual encounters that actually feel good. And so are more receptive, like, first off, are more likely to ask, like, to say, okay, what will feel good in this encounter to you? Like, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to touch you? They're way more likely to ask those questions. And on, like, even if they don't ask up front, are more likely to be receptive to things if you start asking for things that are not part of the quote unquote like script, the heteronormative script of how sex is supposed to work, right? Because they've unlearned the heteronormative script a little bit more than most cis people and straight people have.
I will say, don't completely discount cis or like non-queer people or queer adjacent people either. Please, like, I mean,
no. Like, I'm not saying
some
like,
of us are trying.
I'm not saying like discount these people entirely, but what I am saying is, if you know that you have a history of like, if you're seeking out an encounter and you have a history of having a lot of uncomfortable encounters with people, like, find somebody who's queer, right? That's a good way to have a good experience. That can help build up your confidence. It can help make it easier for you to ask for what you want when you do date sex people or cis sex people. Yeah, when you do date cis people or heterosexual people or whatever. Although,
I mean,
if you're
the good
non-binary,
majority of people are sex people.
yes, right. Like, that's what I'm saying, right? Is if you are having difficulties specifically around gender feels, like, dating another person who has gender feels is a really good way to get back into it, and a really good way to learn how you want to communicate and the kind of sex that you want to have. Just because they've done the work already, and because they speak the same language. They have the same vocabulary when it comes to sex and when it comes to bodies. And it'll be easier to communicate with them what you want.
Also, if that's the type of person you're attracted to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But also at the same time, right? Like, so you jumped on, like, don't discount cis people. But also at the same time, like, I think that it's completely valid for Black people to want to date other Black people because of the shared experience, and not having to deal with whiteness in their intimate lives. Like, I also think that it's completely valid for trans people to only want to date other trans people, or for like, I mean, I think that that's a valid thing, right?
I mean,
because of that reason.
It's valid as if you know why, if you know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you're doing it for back to what you're always saying about preferences and such. Know the reason why you're doing it.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't think that it's okay for white people to only want to date other white people. But I do think that it's okay. And this is me, and we can fight about it some other time or whatever. But I do think that it's okay for somebody who is part of an oppressed minority to only want to date, to not want to date people who don't experience that oppression, just because that will necessarily be a lot of emotional work, right? And to not want to take on that emotional work in your intimate life, I think, is completely valid.
My only issue with that would be when those things cross the line over into feelings of superiority. And that to me is gross.
Yeah.
Which so side note, and completely off subject and maybe get cut off, I've been having issue with people of like anywhere getting superior attitudes, as in my group is superior because we have done this, or we understand this and this better, or we do this and that better, and that makes us better than whatever. And if you've crossed that line, you've already fucked up. Crossing over into superiority, you've already fucked up. But sorry, that was a side note.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're like running right at 2 hours. So,
yeah,
I'm going to summarize it really fast and then we'll sign off. But so
go for it.
my quick summary then is like for gender feels, like if that's something that you're struggling with, finding somebody else who has already done the work can be really helpful. If you don't have a lot of experience, like a lot of sexual experience, like be upfront about it, and find somebody who will be understanding, but not patronizing, right? Like, be upfront about it. Don't try to hide your feelings because you feel like somebody will not want to be with you if they know that you don't have a lot of experience, because people will, right? You don't have to fake that in order for somebody to want to be with you. And then like just communicate, right? If you know that certain types of things have made you uncomfortable in the past, you don't have to do those things. Know what it is that you like, know how you like your body to be touched, and ask for it, right? And it can feel really hard the first few times that you do it, but you just have to take a deep breath and do it. And the more you do it, the easier it'll get. And that's my summary.
All right. With that, looks like it's time to end the show.
Yes.
If you want to be on the show, please let us know. If you want to give us music, please let us know.
Yep.
We got things coming down the pipeline that you should look forward to. So stay tuned, watch our page, listen to our show. And as always, this has been Keem and Esme, and we are out.
But there are these things that matter, and they really fucking matter. There's like 4 things that matter, and they really fucking matter. I mean, objectively, I mean, you should care, especially you, if you thought about it for 5 fucking minutes.